Today, I'm responding to a very recent video from Brethren Lee entitled Millions of Americans and Around the World in a Cult Remix. It's an assertion for which he provides absolutely no support, but that's really not the focus of my response anyway. Let me start by saying that there's something on which Lee and I agree completely, and that is that cults are real and they're destructive. They deceive people, they abuse authority, and they ruin lives, in some cases, actually resulting in the tragic deaths of dozens or even hundreds of people. So, yes, cults are something we should take incredibly seriously. And because cults are so destructive, we have to be very careful about how we define that word and who we apply it to. If you treat the word cult as a label for any group you dislike, the word stops being meaningful. If you define it too broadly, you end up capturing ordinary churches, political movements, or even families that just don't fit the criteria. If you define it too narrowly, then you miss the real danger. So, definitions do matter, and consistent application matters as well. And if we're going to bring scripture into the conversation, then we need to handle the text both carefully and respectfully. After all, the Bible isn't decoration for our opinions. If we cite a verse, it should be because the verse actually teaches the point we're trying to make. That's what it means to treat Scripture responsibly. With that in mind, let's talk about the structure of this video, because the issue here isn't the topic, the issue is the method. And the method itself is kind of a strange mix of mechanics and intent. The entire video follows one pattern, and it's a pattern that we've seen in other videos he's done. Step one is to show an emotionally charged image. Jim Jones, Hitler, David Koresh, an aircraft impacting the World Trade Center, a blindfolded group walking off a cliff. Step two, add a personal assertion. Step three, place a Bible verse underneath it with no explanation of how the verse relates to the claim. I want to be really clear here that he's putting the citation, that's the book, chapter, and verse, for the scripture under his comment, but in the vast majority of cases, he's not including the actual text of the scripture. This creates the impression that scripture is supporting the statement, but without ever demonstrating that the text actually teaches what he's saying. When you open with images of cult leaders, people being burned at the stake, and collapsing buildings, that's not evidence, that's emotional priming. Those images tell the brain how to feel before you've ever even heard an argument. And again, let's remember, cults are dangerous. But imagery isn't argumentation. It's mood setting. It's emotional manipulation. But wait, you might say, isn't that what you're doing? It absolutely is. When I used that image talking about cults, it's because I wanted to evoke a particular emotional response. I want people to have a negative impression or a negative association with cults. That's what marketing is. Marketers use things like words, images, and music to make lasting impressions and to create feelings in their audience. Throughout the video, we get a series of broad claims like suppression of facts is key to the power of the leader. A cult leader requires immunity. It's not about right or wrong, but loyalty to the human leaders. History shows that cults are always dangerous. Those are assertions, those are opinions. Some may be true depending on circumstances, some may not. But in this presentation, they're offered as universal truths without definition, evidence, or context. And again, They're placed directly above a Bible citation, not text, so the audience is encouraged to assume biblical authority where none has been demonstrated. This brings us to the central issue of my response: the way Scripture is being used. Most of the verses cited, Jeremiah 10:23, Romans 1:18, Matthew 15:14, Isaiah 2:22, 1 Thessalonians 5:21, have nothing to do with the claims displayed above them. Those verses are accurate. They're genuine Scripture. The connections being implied by their use are not. It's like slapping NASCAR sponsorship stickers on a 92 Corolla with bald tires and a leaky radiator. The stickers imply endorsement where none actually exists. Adding a Bible citation doesn't automatically give your statement biblical horsepower. If the verse is supposed to support your point, show how the text teaches it. If the verse isn't meant to support the point, then it doesn't belong on the slide. To his credit, there is one slide in the video where Lee quotes scripture and actually displays it correctly in quotations. But on that particular slide, there's no assertion, there's no opinion stated. So it's still true that nowhere in this video does he correctly use scripture to support something he says on the slide. Not a single time does he do it right. Here's an example from a different video that Lee produced where he makes a statement, and the statement's fine, but underneath it, he lists 3 different scriptural passages, 2 of them with a significant number of verses. And there's nothing included there to tie it back to what he said on the slide. I've pushed back on that with him a couple of times, and I always get the same response. If you love truth, you'll go look it up. That's not teaching. That's intellectual laziness. He's putting the burden of proving that his stuff is legit on the students. He's basically saying, go test it. But I challenge him to point to a single time where Jesus taught by doing that. If you're going to teach or preach, you need to be the example because you're held to a higher standard. That doesn't mean making the students do your homework. Remember the warning from James that not many should become teachers because they'll be held to a stricter judgment. There's also an ironic moment in this presentation. At one point, the video warns viewers not to fall for agendas and opinions. That's good advice. The problem is that almost everything in the video is an agenda or an opinion, and the Bible verses placed underneath don't actually say the things being implied. If we're going to warn people about deception, we have to make sure we're not using scripture in a way that creates the very confusion we're warning against. And then there's the issue of open hypocrisy. Lee has consistently asserted that the definition of a cult is a human or humans being given unquestioned authority. In the comments of one of my recent videos in which the definition of cults was discussed, Lee made 2 telling comments when I asked him for support for his claims. The first was, the definition I gave is the only definition. Well, I guess that settles that. The next quote is, you were given the statement. You don't need anything else. So there it is. 2 perfect examples of how something starts small. It's his opinion treated as fact, and any challenge to that is immediately met with a claim of unassailable authority. Lee has spoken. Okay, let's bring it home. We all agree cults are real. Cults are dangerous. Cults are bad. And Scripture absolutely speaks to discernment and truth. But if we want people to take those warnings seriously, then we need to do two things. One, don't demonstrate the very behaviors we're arguing against. And number two, honor the text we're quoting. The Bible deserves more than being used as a bumper sticker to reinforce personal statements. If we're committed to truth, then the claims we make should match the scriptures we cite. That's the responsibility of anyone who teaches, warns, or presumes to guide others. One final note. Since I started making this video, Lee has changed the title of his video to specifically mention and attack MAGA. But throughout the video, he doesn't mention MAGA a single time. He also doesn't provide any evidence whatsoever that MAGA is guilty of anything. That's wrong, it's false witness, and it is exactly what I have come to expect from Brethren Lee. Since I already expect him to accuse me of it, I want to be very clear that I'm not defending MAGA. What I'm doing is pointing out Lee's error. Remember, folks, test everything. Test what I say, test what Lee says. And thanks for watching.